morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today as we urge our state legislators to pass the deadly driving bill, also known as the drug driving bill. This law will equate driving while under the influence of drugs with driving under the influence of alcohol. By establishing a drug driving standard and tests to hold drug impaired drivers accountable, it will prevent further vehicular crimes and, most importantly, provide a legal means to get justice for victims and survivors. With me today are Suffolk County District Attorney Tierney, who helped write the legislation, Queens District Attorney Katz, who, like myself and the rest of the New York City DAs, strongly support this bill, State Senator Natalia Fernandez, a sponsor of the bill who represents this district, the Coalition to Protect New Yorkers from Drug Driving, NYPD Lieutenant J-Tep Singh, the commanding officer of the citywide NYPD Crash Investigation Squad with two of his detectives, the chief of my Vehicular Crimes Bureau, Jeffrey Kimmelman, as well as Joshua Marrero, who's one of our trial prep assistants, ADA Maureen McCormick, who is with the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office, the Special Assistant for Legislative Initiatives. And I have to say, Maureen has been stalwart in this type of legislation for nearly 20 years, providing leadership and counsel and helping us get to the point where hopefully we get this bill passed. We have representatives from Nassau, Staten Island, and the Brooklyn DA's offices. And last but not least, here with us today, the most poignant voices backing this legislation, family members and friends of two victims who died on Bronx streets. Mohammed Rahman, a grandfather and a devout Muslim, was killed right here by a man who was allegedly speeding and impaired by cannabis. That vehicular manslaughter case is pending right now. Mr. Rahman was on his way to his mosque, blocks from here, when he was run down. Also, we have Carlina Lopez. She was 31 years old when, in September of 2021, she was struck and killed near East 174th Street by a speeding pickup truck driven by a man under the influence of cocaine. He pleaded guilty to second-degree manslaughter and was sentenced to 5 to 10 years in prison. There are also survivors of other drug driving victims here as well. I want to thank you and applaud you all for channeling your grief into action, for trying to prevent other families from ever going through what you have gone through. Intoxicated and impaired driving is a big issue in the Bronx. We have hundreds of pending DWIs. Bronx is on the mainland, so we have people driving here to and from Long Island, Manhattan, New Jersey, Westchester, and Connecticut. Currently, a driver can avoid prosecution by refusing an identifying test and not disclosing what they have been using. Drug driving arrests are a way to stop these drivers before they crash and kill. And it's a way to intervene with treatment and behavior modification to keep everyone safe. At this time, I'd like to invite Suffolk DA Tierney to come up and please inform us about the legislation and the impact it will have on public safety.
Good morning, everyone. First and foremost, I want to thank Bronx District Attorney Darcel Clark for inviting me here today. I want to thank all of the district attorneys, Linda Katz, Mike McMahon, Ann Donnelly, Eric Gonzalez for their support of this bill, as well as all the district attorneys who support this bill across New York State. This is a particularly important issue. And again, I want to thank DA Clark for hosting this rally to shine a light on drug driving and the heartbreak it causes. Communities not only here in the Bronx, or my home community, Suffolk County, but communities across the state, counties across the state. Most importantly of all, I want to thank the families of Mohammed Rahman and Karina Lopez who have come here to share their stories, and they're hoping to push legislators to change the antiquated laws that currently govern our drug driving cases. Everyone's voice is important, but when you're talking about this issue in particular, Rahman, Lopez voices are a little bit more loud and a little bit more important on this issue because of the pain that they've endured and their generosity, willing to come in to share that story. And their message is a simple one. They don't want any other families to have to endure what they have. So again, I want to thank them very much for their willingness to come forward. Now the reason that we're here right now is that right now, a person who is driving while impaired by a drug cannot be arrested and prosecuted unless the police officers or law enforcement can name the particular drug that he or she is on. Not only does the law require that the police officers or law enforcement name that law, but that particular drug has to be on the public health law list. So how does that all make sense? Quite clearly, it doesn't make sense. It's absurd. And what that means, if you have an individual who's clearly impaired by a drug, gets pulled over by the police officer, tells the police officer they've ingested cocaine, and the drug test comes back, and that person has in fact ingested heroin, well, that case has to be dismissed. Or perhaps even more absurd, if a person is driving a car while impaired by tranq, which is xylazine, and that person gets pulled over by the officer knows that that person is driving while impaired by tranq. Because tranq is not on this public health law list, that case cannot be prosecuted. So what that means is we're delaying justice, or sometimes not getting justice at all, because these offenses need drug tests, and that's not always available. That's rarely, if ever, available to the police officer at the time of the roadside stop. Now, New York is only one of 4 states with this archaic list requirement, and it really makes no sense because you can easily look at someone and tell that they are impaired by the use of drugs. However, you can't tell which particular drug it is. It reduces the law to a guessing game, and our public safety should not be reduced to a guessing game. If a police officer finds himself in this situation, he has to guess. He or she has to guess. And again, that's just not tenable. Without an arrest, there is no accountability and nothing to stop the drug driver from doing it again. If a person is impaired by drugs and that person does not get arrested, we can't get that person help. We can't suspend that person's license. So again, the public is in danger. It should be simple. If drug impairment is observed, the driver is too dangerous to drive. That's the rule for alcohol. It should be the same rule for drugs. This law is not an expansion of the law. It's just a reworking of the law already in place, so it will better affect public safety. Impaired is impaired, dangerous is dangerous, and we should have a law that reflects that. Again, even more disturbing, drugs such as tranq, rohypnol, and analogs of fentanyl, and hundreds of other impairing substances, if they are not listed on the public health law, individuals cannot be charged with driving while impaired by them. Again, that means if a police officer pulls over someone who is impaired by tranq, one of these fentanyl analogs, they cannot be charged with driving while impaired by drugs. That is wrong. The drivers will go without arrest because of this archaic law. The time is up. We need the deadly driving law passed. Sunday is Mother's Day, and there will be too many empty seats at too many family tables because of this completely preventable crime. Driving fatalities are up in Suffolk County and across the state. Drug driving arrests are up in Suffolk County and across the state. Legislators have took June 6th to finally fix this law that prevents law enforcement from stopping these deadly but preventable drivers before they crash and kill. I want to again thank Darcel Clark, because thanks to her, we will all be watching the legislators, and we are begging them to act. If those lawmakers don't want to listen to any of the public officials here at this podium, we implore them, listen to the Rahman and Lopez families. We want action. We want to close this loophole. Thank you very much.
Thank you, DA Tierney, for coming to us with that important information. Thank you for crossing over the bridge as well. You know?
Always great.
At this time, I'm going to ask DA Katz to come forward, also crossing over a bridge, to be with us. Glad to have you here in the Bronx as well, DA Katz.
Then we gotta go to the meeting.
Yes.
Good afternoon. I do want to thank DA Clark, DA Tierney, and all the families that have been affected by what we call vehicle incidents and collisions. I am the District Attorney for Queens County, and I will tell you that driving is one of the most dangerous things someone can do while impaired or while under the influence. It's a split second. It is the time of a heartbeat. That when you drive and you are impaired, you are changing the trajectory of the people's lives all around you. It is one of the most random crimes that you can commit. It is one of the most selfish crimes that you can commit. You smoke pot, you take drugs, I don't care how you do that. You drink alcohol, you get into a vehicle unable to control that vehicle to the best of your ability. You are not just putting yourself in danger. You are not just putting your family or whoever's in the car in danger. You are randomly putting every family around you in danger. Someone who you might hit changes the trajectory of that family. That family grows up without a mother. That family grows up without a father. That family has to live with the guilt and with the loss of a child who they should never ever have to bear. It is selfish and it is random. So any laws that allow us to send a very clear message that if you get into a car while you are impaired, whatever drug it is, whatever alcohol you are drinking, whether it's Trank, whether it is any other drug that's on the list or off the list, that you will be held accountable for that crime. Because let me tell you something, if you don't injure someone one day while you are under the influence and while you are impaired, most likely you will injure someone another day or you will kill them. And the selfishness of that is beyond anyone's imagination unless they have lived it. So in my office, I've made prosecution of vehicular crimes a priority. We have redefined and tightened our guidelines for all vehicular crimes. Most recently, I formed a dedicated vehicular crimes unit, and my unit chief, John Sobo, is here with me today. And we want to demonstrate that we have active, trained ADAs with the expertise to prosecute vehicular crimes, because that's how important it is to me and to my office. As DA Tierney was reviewing, a police officer can observe an obviously impaired driver, and that person may not be able to be arrested or prosecuted under today's laws. Oftentimes, all the driver needs to do at the scene is refuse a drug test to avoid accountability. And it's about time that New York State caught up with the technology that we are facing today. The new drugs, the different variations of the drugs, whatever drug it is that makes you impaired. And I'll say once again to end, you can drive while impaired. This isn't about you only. It's about every single car or pedestrian or scooter or bicycle or anyone that you come in contact with, or in the case of Queens, a police officer, that you come in contact with when you make that choice to get behind the wheel. And that is a loophole we have to close in the state legislature. My heart goes out to the families that have been affected by vehicular crimes. Oftentimes it is random. Most of the time it's random. And we need to make sure that there's accountability device. Thank you.
Thank you so much, D.A. Katz. At this time, I'm going to ask Senator Natalia Fernandez, who's also one of the co-sponsors of the bill, and she is the senator for this district. Senator Fernandez.
Thank you so much to our DAs for this coalition of action. Thank you to the community for coming out and standing today in representation of our family members, our neighbors who we unfortunately had to lose because of irresponsibility. I am the senator of the 34th Senatorial District, which is right here in Castle Hill, but I'm also the chair of the Committee of Alcoholism and Substance Use Disorder in the State Senate. And I'm a co-sponsor of this bill because, as it's been said, we do have to send a message that impaired driving is irresponsible, it is dangerous, and just like drunk driving, consequences will be met if you are found guilty. And we need to know that our streets are safe. We're taking every measure right now in New York City especially, making sure that we have safe streets, passing Sammy's Law so we can reduce speed limits, adding speed bumps and stop signs and lights, which we should be doing over here too. But when it comes to someone that is impaired, whether it is alcohol or pot or drugs or anything else, that is dangerous and you should be held accountable. So I'm a proud co-sponsor of this bill because we do need to fix this loophole. We're one of 4 states that has not addressed this, and that's unacceptable for New York. We pride ourselves in being a state of leaders, a state that holds people responsible, that creates responsible citizens. And this is a bill that we need to get done to continue to do that. So I thank again the family members for standing here today. My sincerest condolences again. But we can make our streets safer, and it starts with this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Fernandez, for your leadership, for moving this bill forward, and most importantly, for your leadership of the Committee on Alcohol, because that is just so very important. We've done a number of things together, and you have been a phenomenal leader in making sure that we are safe in the Bronx. At this time, we're going to ask Saidur Rahman, the son of Mohammed Rahman, to come up. Thank you so much for being here. This is a painful time, I'm sure of you, because it happened right here. But thank you for lending your voice.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Today I start with the greetings of peace. On September 25th, 2023, we lost a valuable member of the Parkchester Castle Hill community. Beloved grandfather to his 18 grandchildren, and a father that never stopped loving his 7 kids, no matter how old they were, until his last day. On September 25th, 2023, my father's life was taken away from someone who drove carelessly under the influence. We never expected to lose my father suddenly, but God is the best of planners. Today we are here to support the deadly driving bill law to prevent another one of our loved ones from a tragic event. I appreciate everyone for gathering here today. Your presence will make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we will hear from Dr. Jeffrey Reynolds from the coalition.
Good morning. Thank you, D.A. Park, D.A. Katz, D.A. Tierney from Suffolk County, the families for being here, and just law enforcement in general. I'm Jeff Reynolds. I'm the president and CEO of Family and Children's Association, one of the oldest and largest addiction service providers on Long Island. We run 2 state licensed chemical dependency treatment centers, 3 recovery centers. In any given year, we serve about 40,000 Long Islanders who are struggling with a variety of problems. I'm also fortunate to be representing the Coalition to Protect New Yorkers from Drug Driving. It's a group group that includes more than 50 public health-oriented organizations, including MAD, including the New York State Public Health Association, the New York chapter of the American College of Physicians, the National Alliance to Stop Impaired Driving, and Responsibility.org. My main message here today is that this is not simply about law enforcement. This is about public health. And one of the things that we learned out of the opioid crisis is that we get better results when law enforcement and addiction providers work hand in hand. The days of the silos are long gone, and we've been able to do some really innovative programs to get folks into treatment, to get them into care, and quite frankly, to keep them out of the criminal justice system. We all know that at this point in time, mental health symptoms are up in our community. We know that drug and alcohol use is up in our community. Even if we don't see it in the statistics, it's a reality that we're seeing each and every day, with 20% more people coming to us for help this year than last year, and we expect the number to increase. All of us believe that an impaired driving arrest is a really uncomfortable, unfortunate incident, but it beats the alternative. And one of the things we know about addiction is that unless something interrupts the pattern that's happening, change won't happen. That shouldn't be a fatality. That shouldn't be a serious injury. That's what law enforcement is for. I work with thousands of patients in any given year. Those who find a path to recovery will say, thank God I was arrested before something worse happened. Thank God I never killed anyone. For those that do and they injure another person, their recovery is forever tainted with the guilt of those who have taken another person's life. The DA Tierney made a very good point about Mother's Day and the number of empty chairs around the kitchen table in living rooms. The legislature should not be for doing this. You know, we have all expressed our support, our concern, and our love for families impacted by impaired driving. We've got to do better than that. We've got to stop this from happening. And this piece of legislation is key to making that happen. It's key to public health, and it ought to happen right now. Thank you very much.
And finally, we will hear from Kathy Lopez, the sister of Karina Lopez.
Good morning. As stated, I am the sister of Karina Lopez. She was killed September 2021 by a driver who was under the influence of drugs and cocaine. This was a hard time for us. My sister was young. She was 31-year-old, working, about to make a family, and instead now, we have to grieve and just suffer through this, something that could have possibly been stopped. So, I mean, we support this bill, my sister and my younger sister. Nobody should be, our streets should be safe. This is our home. The Bronx is our home. And we just want everyone to be safe and to not go through this. I have to feel this pain because it's not a good one. It's something that affects our lives every day. It's 2024 now, and it still hurts like that. So we support it, and we want everyone else to go through this.
Thank you so much, Kathy. At this time, we'll now take questions on topic.
So I'm curious to know if the bill is closed, will there still be that onus on the officer to make a judgment call if somebody is impaired? Do the officer still need to make a judgment if they're
If I could just address that, we have discussed this many times, and in reality what it is that the officer has to be able to see, articulate, describe. Imagine yourself in a bar and you see somebody drunk across from you at the bar. If you were the officer, you'd have to say, well, what I saw that told me that that person was impaired is red watery eyes, they were unsteady. They have to demonstrate it. They have to describe it in order to bring the charge.
So that's still complicated because it relies on an officer.
But it's no different from alcohol. With alcohol, you can make the observation.
If I could just clarify this, because we're almost a victim of our own success on blood alcohol concentrations. You do not need a .08 blood alcohol concentration to charge somebody with drunk driving. You need the observations of the law enforcement officer or other people, by the way, can also provide that information. The only time 08 is necessary on a drunk driving charge is when the person looks good on the outside, when they are so tolerant that they're no longer showing outward signs of intoxication. We're not going to have that for drugs. What we want is the common law observations. If you can see it, you're impaired, and you should not be driving the car, and that's it.
And would this create, the checkpoints that you have for DWI? Would you have the same checkpoints for drugs driving? Or?
That's a law enforcement decision
Right.
as to how.
Right. We don't make those decisions. That's law enforcement. How they enforce the rules of the road would still apply.
I guess would it make it easier for them to at a checkpoint to
The observation is the
demand a
observation.
test?
The police make these observations all the time when they see people driving. The thing is that we want the loophole to be closed, that just like alcohol, if you could smell the alcohol, you could see the way they drove, all of the factors that you can articulate, we want the police to be able to do that if somebody is impaired on drugs. Right now, it has to be on a list of drugs. They have to be able to say that it was that particular drug. We want the common law where you can see the same observation, the driving erratically, their eyes, whatever that you can describe. We want them to be able to use that in order to make that cross. Right now, it can't be done.
So in other words, under the law of alcohol, we don't have to prove that they're impaired by beer or gin or scotch. So same thing with drugs. If they're impaired by drugs, they're impaired by drugs. If they're impaired by alcohol, they're impaired by alcohol. So it just makes it the same.
Vehicle crimes, yes, kind of a good example.
So basically, I mean, I think hopefully we're getting to the bottom of it here, but what we're trying to, with this bill, sorry, I'll move. Hi. So what I think everyone is saying, and I think a good example is this, let's say someone takes a gummy, right, a weed gummy, and they get behind the wheel of a car, and they're impaired and they're driving, and they're swerving, and the cops see this and they pull them over. If that person, when they're pulled over, doesn't say what they're under the influence of, but the officer sees all the indicia of someone under the influence of cannabis, and that person doesn't give them that statement, I took a gummy, that officer is handcuffed. They can't do anything. That officer has to let them go, give a summons. This law, right now, our current state of the law requires that officer to name that substance, and they can't do it under that example. Under the change in this law, any substance that the person's under the influence of, the officer can then make that arrest and take the defendant back for further testing. And that's the key component of this to help prevent tragic events like the ones you heard about today. Jeffrey Kimmelman, Chief of Vehicular Crimes of the DA Clark.
Any other questions?
I had an off-topic question about an arrest.
On topic.
It's okay.
On topic?
We'll do it now.
We could have somebody speak to you after this. This is a little different than what we're doing. Okay, I know. We'll have somebody, sir, we'll have somebody speak with you in a moment, okay? Thank you. Anyone else? On topic? No? All right. Thank you for coming.